Jim, you've been a medical doctor for about 35 years, I understand.
Roundabout.
And also clinical psychologist?
A psychotherapist.
Psychotherapist.
Yeah. Right.
Oh. And made a difference in a lot of people's lives, worked hard.
Yeah.
And then you bumped into Nikken, and I hope that'll be the main thrust of your story, but also just some perspective medically with Nikken, and just tell your story. But he's an amazing guy. One of the CDs I like to listen to a lot is Jim Bews. You're a good man, and I appreciate you coming and speaking for us. So,
thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here, man. Well, I'm Dr. Jim Bews. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. I've actually been a physician now for 41 years. And for 25 of those years, I was an assistant professor at the University of Calgary, teaching medicine. How did I get into Nikken? Oh, listen, I want this to be kind of informal, and I want this to be fun, and I want it to be the best meeting that you've ever been to. How does that sound? Now, there's a catch. If this was going to be the best meeting you've ever been to, what would you guys have to do? Yeah, you'd have to participate, appropriately. And whenever something comes up, I'm going to be telling you some stuff, but the stuff I'm going to tell you is the stuff that I know the best. It may not be the best, but it's what I know the best. So if you agree with me, just nod enthusiastically. And if you don't, just blink your eyes. And come up and talk to me about it later, okay? So I'd been a doctor for about 25 years. And I remember coming home, and at the kitchen table, Joy and I were having dinner. I said, honey, I looked after people like us, and I'm having my prescription pads pre-printed for painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and I'm looking after our friends, and I'm helping them, and I'm killing them at the same time with the side effects. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I said, there's got to be something else that will help people, and I'm going to find it. And I started to study. And I studied, I'm a student as well as a teacher, and I'm a diligent student, and I studied for 4.5 years, and I never actually found anything that I could put my mind behind. And if I couldn't put my mind behind it, I wasn't going to put my heart behind it. If I couldn't put my heart behind it, I wasn't going to introduce it to my patients. Make sense? Right? I really loved what I was doing. Then a strange thing happened. My father had had a stroke in 1989. He was 76. And for the next 10 years, he suffered with agony in his right wrist. And as doctors, we don't know why people have that post-stroke discomfort. And I can remember my dad was a great big football player type guy, and I can remember him sitting on the edge of the bed. He'd just sit there like that, and he'd say, Jim, isn't there anything you can do for me? And my heart would melt, and I'd say, Dad, I'm your son, not your doctor, and I really don't know what else to do for you. Then in about 1999, Mom was developing Alzheimer's that we could recognize. She had gone to the bank, which was just 2 blocks away from her house, and it took her 8 hours to get home. And she was driving around and around and around, couldn't find her house. And fortunately, a neighbor saw her driving around and went out and stopped the car. This is in downtown Toronto, big city, a lot of bad things could have happened, right? And he said, lady, show me your license. And so he said, Mrs. Bews, you live right over there. He took her over to her garage, and Dad phoned us, and very quickly we arranged to have Mom and Dad go into a retirement home up in Ottawa where my sister lived at the time. And when he got up there, he got a new set of doctors, right? Now, my dad was a nice guy. If you'd have met him, you'd have liked him. And his doctors liked him too. And so they said, Mal, you're 86 years old. You're in agony. You're on morphine. We really don't have much more to offer than what you're on already. So, but here's what we can do. We can take a syringe and we can fill it up with a poison, and we can inject it into your spinal cord, and we can selectively kill the nerves to your right arm, and you'll be pain-free. You're 86. How long can you live? So my sister, thinking this wasn't a good idea, went to her next-door neighbor who worked for a company called Nikken. I'd never heard of them. And said, do you have anything from your Japanese healthcare company that would help my dad? And the woman quite rightly said, I don't know. why don't you try this little hand wrap? It goes from about the middle of your hand to about 2 inches past your wrist. It sure has helped a lot of other people. And so my sister took that hand wrap into my dad. It was September 19th, 1999, and put it on his wrist. And after 10 years of agony, unrelieved by anti-inflammatories and morphine several times a day, his pain was gone in 30 minutes. Isn't that an amazing story? Well, now that's the first part of the story. So my dad picked up the phone and he said, "No, I need you to know that my dad and I have a very loving relationship." But he said, "Good morning, son." And I said, it was unusual. It was a Saturday morning. I said, "Good morning, Dad. Where's this going, Dad?" And he said, "And your sister, she's a housewife." He said, "She just took my pain away. You've done nothing for me for 10 years. She just took my pain away in 30 minutes. I went, now I know my sister likes to watch health shows on TV, right? General Hospital and whatnot. But she's a little short of my experience level. So I said, "Dad, how did she do that?" He said, "Magnets." I went, "Oh, Dad. Oh, Dad, how much did you pay for it?" Because he was 86. I thought he'd been scammed. He said, "I don't know, $60. He said, "My pain is gone. I'd really like you to look into this." Are you with me? So, I love my dad, and I said I'd look into it. And I remembered that 2 of my patients, a year before, when they were getting their physical, had come in, and I said, I'm interested in people. And I said, what's exciting in your life? What I heard them say was they were selling magnetic beds. And I had this vision of these beds that would vibrate or something. And I had my stethoscope in my ears, and I was listening to his wife's chest. They always came in together for some reason. And I was listening to her chest, and I said, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. My waiting room is full. I'm behind anyway. So I let it go, but I remembered who they were, and I phoned them up, and I went out to their place, and they showed me all the products. Now, the first thing they did was the strength test on me. And I couldn't... Have every one of you had a strength test? Have you all had a strength test? So you know that it's pretty amazing the difference it takes. How long does it take that difference to occur when you're standing on mag steps? It's immediate, right? So here I am, assistant clinical professor at the university, and they're knocking me off my feet 1 minute, and the next minute they can't budge me. How does that work? I don't know. So they said, did I want to join and buy everything? And I said, no. And then they did a great thing. They took me out to a horse clinic. They brought a couple of horses up from Spruce Meadows. I have horses. If horses have a sore back, you can go down their back just like this, and they'll just flinch away from you. So they brought these 2 thoroughbreds out, and hunter jumpers, and they went in. They threw a horse blanket. Nikken used to have horse blankets at that time, over the back with 2 rows of magnets down either side, 2 down the hips and 2 down the shoulders. And then they just took that horse and they stood it in the back of the arena. They brought the second horse out, and the second horse had the same back afflictions. Now these were horses, these were elite athletes, right? Used to going over jumps, and this Nikken distributor's job was to get those horses back into shape and get rid of their pain. So the other horse had the same thing. I can't remember what product they used on the other horse, but they sent them off, and they then called people up from the audience to do the strength test and to talk about the other products. And about 25 minutes or 30 minutes later, they brought those horses back. And they called this great big guy out of the audience, and a great big farmer with ham hands, and they said, give it to him. And the guy went, give it to him? And they said, yeah, give it to him. And he drove down those horses' backs. And not a flinch. And the horses were standing with their ears akimbo and, mouthing their lips. They were perfectly relaxed. And I went, oh my goodness, there's no placebo effect in animals, right? Why is there a placebo effect in humans?
We want to get better.
Well, all animals want to get better. All children under the age of 10 want to get better, right? But in some adults, right, it's up here. Then the next thing they did was they put me in touch with a doctor on Vancouver Island who was using these products. And I said, well, what do you sell? And he said, I sell those shoe things. And he said, at that time we had a little tins unit. And he said, I can't keep those on the shelf because they help so many people. Now that product is gone, but there are other products that we use with similar effects on these folks. So I thought, I went and I borrowed a pair of these mag steps and I took them out to Joy's brother. Now, you have to know that I'm married to a scientist. And she believed this, and she loves her brother, and she said, don't you be taking those things out there. Marvin spent thousands of dollars trying to get rid of his hip pain because he had been born with a congenital abnormality in his hip. His hip, he had Legg-Perthes disease. And his hip, instead of being round and turning properly, was twisted and gnarled. And it was going, and I was sending him anti-inflammatories for my sample cupboard in my office, because why should he pay for them? And so I knew he was taking anti-inflammatories, bunches of them, every single day. So I never told Joy at this point. She's forgiven me since. I slipped a pair of these into my suitcase, and I took them out, and on Saturday morning I went over to her brother's house. Joy's mom lives in the country, and Marvin lived across the street in the country. And I went over and I said, Marvin, what have we got to lose? These things, at that time, I said, these are $90 retail. I did the strength test on him, and he went, wow. Down came my nephews, and I did the strength test on them, and they went, wow. You know, kids are so much. They said, Uncle Jim, you're the best. You know. And so we did that, and then we went away, and we got on with our chores for that day. So we got together at dinner time that night, and I said, Marvin, how's your hip? And he went, oh, I forgot to take my pills today. He said, my hip is good. Well, I kind of backed away from him, and he kind of backed away from me, and because he's an engineer, an engineering technician, an academic engineering technician, even worse. But he didn't care, you see, because his pain was gone. And the next day we got together at dinner. I said, Marvin, how's your pain? And he said, Jim, he said, I don't have any pain, and I haven't taken any pills again today. But you got to hear what happened. I left something on the bed upstairs, and I ran up the stairs 2 at a time, and when I got to the top, I looked back down because I can't do that. The next day we got together, and I said, I was walking home from a walk that we'd gone on when Joy was walking ahead with her brother Marvin, and I was walking with his wife Iris, and she said, Jim, you're not getting those shoe things back. She said, he's walking almost without a limp, and I'm going, I know. So Marvin and I got together at the airport, and I said, Marv, it's going to wear off. I mean, you want to get better. That's why it's working. And he said, I know that. He said, phone me tomorrow. He said, I'm going up to the Okanagan. It's a 5-hour drive. He said, I can't get out of the car when I get to that university up there. And I phoned him that night, and he had no pain. He said, phone me tomorrow. I'm in a board meeting. He said, they bring meals into us. We never leave. He said, I can't walk when I get out of that meeting. I phoned him. He said, Jim, I'm fine. I phoned him every night for 13 weeks. My sister-in-law was getting kind of annoyed with me. On the 14th day, I said, Iris, can I speak to Marv? She said, no, he's playing out in the backyard. She said, I don't see him do that. And she started to cry. And she said, Jim, she said, Marv hasn't been in bed with me past about 4:30 in the morning for 10 years because his pain hurts him so bad in his hip, he's got to get up and move it around. She said, since you left, he hasn't taken one pill. He hasn't any discomfort. And he's lying right beside me when I wake up at 6:30 in the morning. She said, we were in church last week, and someone came up to us and said, Marvin, I don't know what the doctors have you on now, but it's sure better than the last stuff because all the pain has left your face. Isn't that a great story? So I took that information and I said, oh, then we had one other cute thing happen with Joy. I'm a long-distance runner, but I'm kind of bow-legged. So I guess my takeoff is wrong, and I got osteoarthritis in my right big toe. And I went, boy, what am I going to do? I really like to be an active guy. So I went and I had orthotics made, and it rolled me off that joint. And that worked. Worked for about 1.5 years, and then my other joints were taking more of the weight than they should be, and they started to hurt. And I'm going, wow, I'm in trouble here. So my wife said to me, she said, Jim, let's go for a walk. And I said, okay. She said, take your orthotics out. We live in the country. I said, Joy, I can't get to the mailbox without my orthotics. You know that. She said, put those things in your shoes. They work for your dad. They work for Marvin. They'll work for you too. She knew they wouldn't, right? By the time we got to the end of the driveway, honey, I don't know if you've ever heard me tell that story. By the time we got to the end of the driveway, I realized I'd taken my orthotics out and I was placing my foot flat on the ground and there was no pain there. We walked 8 kilometers that day, and I wasn't able to do that before that, especially without those orthotics in my shoes. And I came back, got in my truck, went around to find it because I was amazed at how far I could walk. And now we have 3 cases right in a row that worked instantly on each of us. My dad, my brother-in-law, and me. We thought they'd work on everybody instantly, and they don't. But it does about 50% of the time. And another 25% of the people may take 5 or 6 or 7 days before they perceive that it's working. Now, it's working right from the get-go. It has to, because your electrons are no different than my electrons. You apply a magnetic force to it, we know what it does, right? But just like some people have a different pain tolerance, some people have a different perception of when this starts working for them. And about 24% of people might take up to a month. And some people might not perceive the difference for 2-3 months. We encourage people to keep using these things. So what I did next was I bought 40 pairs of these shoe things. Right? I joined up, bought 40 pairs of these things, and I started to introduce them into my practice. For people mostly with foot and ankle problems or knee problems or hip problems. And every time I gave those to a person, they were getting better. And wow, it didn't seem to matter what I was giving it to. I was getting great results with everybody. I got a lot of stories I could tell you. But at any rate, the next thing that happened was a guy named William Pollock came up from New Jersey. And William Pollock was a doctor, and he was the president of the North American Magnetic Medical Association. Did you know that existed? I didn't either. But he came up, and it was a group of doctors just like me who were looking for some other way to help their patients other than drugs. All right? It's not that we're against drugs. I'll bet you. Put your hand up if you've had your life saved by drugs in this room. Saved by a drug in this room. If you, not in this room, but if you've had your life saved by a drug. Has anyone ever had a strep throat? Did you get penicillin for that? Do you know that used to kill people? Right? So, or an appendix, where people die from. So, we're not against modern medicine, but I just think there are some things that we're not taught in medical school, for sure, that I wish we had been taught in medical school. There are other things. We were taught to diagnose disorders and then to reach for a prescription pad and to write a prescription for them. At any rate, after 25 years, I'd paled on that. So I was glad to hear there was this North American Magnetic Medical Association. And I took about 20 people over that lecture. And I took 17 pages of notes. This guy was ADD, and he must have been. His energy was so high, he was over the moon about Nikken products. And when we left that meeting, Joy said, there's so much science in this. You've got to get my sister-in-law on this. You've got to get the people in my bridge club on this. And wow, we were really impressed with the science that was behind these products. Now, we don't know how 70% of the drugs in medicine work. Is that frightening? Yeah. So we know what they do from observation, but we don't know how they do it at the cell membrane. We know more about how magnets work at the cell membrane level than we do we don't know how Viagra works, but it hasn't stopped the sales of Viagra, right? Okay, that was supposed to be a joke, you guys. You got to work with me. Remember that was your part? Joy and I have been on the road. We thought it was going to take 8 hours. Well, our first hour took 3 hours. We came in a nail-biting snowstorm. We're traveling along at 20 kilometers an hour. That's about 8 miles an hour for you guys. And I thought, should I phone Dave and tell him we're not going to get there? And I said, we'll pull over here and, hold up for a while and see if it clears. And it did. And I'm glad we came because we certainly couldn't miss you guys, and we're certainly not going to miss Elton John either. Then I started to learn about other things that you could use these for. And I remember a mom bringing, just towards the end of my office, she came in with her little daughter, and I listened to her chest, and I said, your daughter's got a little wheezing in there. I said, you're together, Mom. I said, you want to try something? And she said, sure. And I said, I'm going to put this little magnet on a string around your daughter's neck. And it was a little leather thong, actually, so that if she caught it, it would break. And I said, here's the deal. Here's my card. Here's my home phone number. If your daughter gets into trouble tonight, you call me. I'll come right over to your house. I'll bring an inhaler with me. I said, but if you don't have a problem with that, with her breathing, I want you to be my first patient's at 8:30. You be here at 8:15. She said, okay. I went home. I said, honey, you know what I did tonight? I put a magnet on a kid for wheezing, right? I said, I may be going out tonight. She didn't call. 8:15 the next morning, she came in. I listened to her chest. I said, well, her breathing's clear. And she said, oh, no, Jim. It was clear by the time we reached the car in the parking lot. Wow. Ooh. So I thought, little kid, little magnet. Big woman, big magnet. So I put the next one. I put one of those maxi discs in. Same thing happened. Then I started to use the necklace. Wow, was that great? I helped so many people in that year that it was really, really gratifying. And the patients, they loved it. One thing they didn't want to do was be on medications. Right? I mean, no one likes to put stuff in their body that wasn't meant to be there, right? So then I retired from active medical practice, and I started to do retired things, which was nothing. That lasted about 6 weeks, and I realized that wasn't going to work. So I started to do Nikken on a very part-time basis. And I did that for about 6 years, and I got to the platinum level. Then Reed Nelson asked me one day if I would consider doing this as a business instead of as a hobby. Because he said if you would do this as a business, with all the efficiencies of a business, you could help probably thousands of people instead of the dozens of people that you're helping now. And so with his support and a lot of other support from a lot of other people, I'm now a diamond, and we have helped a lot of people over the years, and it's been a great run. The support has been tremendous from the people above us. I'll tell you what happened to me at the very beginning was I wanted to investigate the company. The company now has been around for 36 years. I think they're in 38 or 39 countries now. They're opening other countries as they go, and every year they sell, $1.5 billion worth of product, and they have no stores and no employees, right? It's all word of mouth, one person telling another person about this. Now, so I knew the company was rock solid. They had a 5A1 Dun & Bradstreet rating, the highest rating any company can have. They were a cash-rich company. Everybody who was in Nikken just raved about the reliability of this company. I was prepared to believe them. I went out and I got every CD. No, they weren't CDs then. They were tapes and those VHS, VCR things. And I watched those. I remember my sponsor gave me a box, and I would listen to those things on the way to work and on the way home from work. And boy, I learned a lot about those things pretty darn quickly. As a matter of fact, one of the tapes I listened to was Dave's, one of Dave's original tapes. And what I liked about Dave's tape is, of course, he's the funniest guy in the world. You want to know, that was important to me. Because I didn't want to do something where I had to work harder and more seriously than I was working in my office now. I wanted to work at a job that was more fun and where you could have fun with the people that you were working with. That was another thing. I was a solo practitioner. I was used to working on my own all the time. When I went away on holidays, and for the first 5 years I didn't go away on holidays because, you're young, you're building your practice. But when I did start to go away on holidays, I turned the key in that door. If I turned the key in that door, my income fell to zero, but my expenses didn't fall to zero because I still had to pay for my mortgage, and I still had to pay for my office expenses and my lab and my nurse. Later on, I had other doctors come in and look after my practice for me, and so I had to pay them as well. Well, that doesn't happen with Nikken. A couple of years ago, Joy and I are blessed to be involved with a third world charity where we give money, small amounts of money, between $100 and $300 to people to women, mostly to women in developing countries. And the charity is called Impact First International, and it's a wonderful thing. And with that $100 that we'll give to somebody, to a woman, she can start a business because no one else will give her that money. And she has to pay that money back to us with interest. And we form 15 people into a bank, and they all guarantee each other's loan, and our loan payback rate is 98%. Wow, any bank would be thrilled at that. And then we take that $100 and we loan it out again to another person. And over the 20 years we've been involved with this, we think we've helped about 65,000 women. Isn't that great? And we always say they have 8 kids, but they have more. We don't want to say they have more than that because there might be a backlash against them for having too many kids. But so we say they have about 8 kids. So 8 kids, a mom and a dad, that's about 10, 65. That's almost 750,000 people who are able to feed themselves and clothe themselves, send their kids to school and to healthcare clinics because a group of people cared enough to gather and give some of their money to people less fortunate in the world. Because we're all in the same world, aren't we? So Joy and I get to travel a little bit, and we were in India. And in India, you can't work because the power, even if you're trying to get on the internet, the power goes out every 20 minutes, and so you start on an email. The only work I did in 3 weeks in India was answer 3 emails. Yes, I'll come someplace. No, I won't go there, and 1 other email. And when I came home, I opened my Nikken check, and it was larger than the month before. And Joy said, we got to go away more often. So I love the company. The products are absolutely outstanding. And I'm not going to tell you about the products in any great detail tonight. But when I was, over the last 2 or 3 years, I worked pretty hard. And I was doing a lot of presentations. And I can remember walking down the hall to my back bedroom, doing a wellness home with a couple. And I kind of went, this is my 3rd one of the day. And I said, have I been down here already? And I realized I couldn't remember where I was in the presentation if I'd got a little overwhelmed with it. And so I said, how am I going to remember? And I thought, well, what do we teach? Well, we teach, our products are about sleep, water, air, nutrition. Wait a minute, I want to do something before we get to that. The thing that I loved about Nikken was the different concept they had about health that I'd never seen before. They said, look, it looks like we're moving away from nature, and the farther away we get, the sicker we seem to get. How can we move back towards nature? And what is it about nature that makes us healthy anyway? And of course, Nikken discovered 3 technologies. They discovered the energy of the earth, magnetism, the energy of the sun, far infrared, and the energy of the air, negative ions. So those are the 3 technologies, and then they built them into a bunch of products. So I got thinking about the products. I said, well, where do we work in? We work in sleep, water, air, nutrition. That spells SWAN, right? I can remember SWAN, right? And you can too, right? How do you spell SWAN? You guys can be rocket stars in this business, right? That's all you need to know, SWAN. What if I told you that 85% of people in North America don't get a good night's sleep? Now, would that be a good product line to have if you were a company? Oh. What if I told you that 100% of people wanted to drink pure, clean water? What if we had the best water filtration and treatment system in the world and we could prove it? I love that part. We could prove it to people, right? Because our stuff is independently tested. What if I said that the 4th highest cause of environmental cancer in North America is the air you breathe inside your home? Because everything, our paints, our insulation, our flooring, our furniture, our glues, all give off gases that we can't smell. Joy and I are fortunate enough to have 3 wood-burning fireplaces, and we love those. But before I load wood into that, my Power 5 Pro goes off, because it detects the unburned gases that have come out of that fireplace. I can't smell them, but they're going into my lungs. I have a choice. Either that thing can filter it, or my lungs can filter it. Right? So that makes sense to you, doesn't it? What if I told you that the nutritional value of the food you eat is probably not as good as it was when your grandparents were around? Right? Does that make sense? Everybody knows that, right? We all need nutritional supplementation. What if I told you that Nikkens were pharmaceutical grade, which means they're 98% accurate in their labeling and contents, versus, did you know there's a law called the Good Manufacturing Practices Law? Do you know what level of accuracy they have to have? 17%. In other words, they only have to have 17% of what they say on the label actually in the product, and it doesn't have to be in every tablet or pill. It just has to be in the batch that was made that day. The Good Manufacturing Practices Law, and it was written in 1934, when people were still stirring vats with wooden paddles. And in 1934, 17% was the highest level of accuracy you could reasonably expect to get. This is 2011. We can get 98% accuracy, right? That's called pharmaceutical grade, and we're the ones that have that. But our vitamins and minerals are different from anybody else's in that ours are whole foods grown organically. Your body does not need more chemicals. Would you agree? It needs nutrition. What if I told you that this company had the joint formula that the U.S. Olympic team has been using for years? They're not using Celebrex and Vioxx, right? They're using our product. What if I told you that we had a product that would prevent osteoporosis, and if you had it, it would regrow bone, and we could prove it to you? Would that be a good thing? What if we had a product that could take your immune system? You know, your immune system is important, right? It fights off everything. So your immune system works perfectly till about age 35, then it begins to go downhill. But I'm soon to be 65, and I have the same level of immunity that I had when I was 18. And that's a blood test. You can test that. You can't fudge that research. Would that be a good product to have? What if I told you that our magnetic and far infrared products could decrease discomfort, could decrease inflammation, could increase circulation, and we could prove that with those thermographic studies, with no side effects and no contraindications to their use? Would those be good products? That's what I explain to people. And I say, does that make sense to you? And they go, yeah, it really does. And I say, would you like to see these products? You know, I don't show them, I don't take them down to my bedroom anymore. So what I do is I say, here's our sleep system. I say, do you sleep on a normal bed? And they usually say, yeah. And I go, does it have metal springs in it? They go, yep. I say, well, those metal springs collect electricity. And you can measure that with an induction meter. I got to tell you this story. I'm over at a friend of mine's house one day, and he's a Nikken distributor, and we're doing a presentation to one other guy, and a third guy comes up to the door, and he doesn't know we're doing a presentation. He's just coming in to have coffee with his friend, and his friend works from home now. So he comes in, and he's wearing this kind of meter on his belt. And so I'm a curious fellow, and I said, what's that meter? And he looks at me, and he goes, it's an electrical pollution meter. So I know he's dumbing it down for me, right? I said, oh, really? I said, show me how it works. So he takes it off his belt, and he clicks it on, and he holds it up to an incandescent light, and it goes, and a little reading on the scale. And I went, oh, that's interesting. He said, that's nothing. And then he held it up to a fluorescent light, and it went, a little higher reading. I said, oh, that's interesting. Fluorescent lighting is more polluting than incandescent lighting. He said, absolutely. He said, that's nothing. He said, come with me. He walks down to my friend's bedroom. He puts it down on his guest bed on the top of it, and it goes, ee! And the little needle goes right off the eye. I said, what's happening? He said, metal springs in this bed are collecting the electrosmog, the electrical pollution that's in this house, that's everywhere, and you're laying right on top of it. And that's not good for you. So what we do is we put this foam thing on top, rubber, latex rubber, and it has magnets in it. Magnets are very good for you. We've done a strength test on these people by that time. We put a pillow in there, and that's got magnets in there, and then we put you in there. And then, what? And then we put the comforter so that you're cocooned in that magnetic energy of the earth, replacing and restoring the energy that you're supposed to have replaced and restored by living on the magnetic earth. But we don't live on the magnetic earth anymore, do we? 95% of the time we're indoors. This has got a cement basement with rebar in it, I bet, cement floor. In many people's houses, at least in Canada, there's a basement. So you're removed 12 feet from the earth already. And then some people go upstairs to go to bed. And your house is just surrounded by electricity, right? Nobody's going to give up their fridges or their stoves or their computers or their big screen TVs, right? Guys? Okay? You don't give up your big screen TV, right? Did you know that the big screen TV is genetically programmed on the Y chromosome? So apparently I have 2 or 3 Y chromosomes. At any rate, when I draw that picture, they go, wow. And then I say, we call this our deep sleep system, and it pulls you down into that deeply restorative sleep that people haven't gotten for years. If 85% of people don't get a good night's sleep, and you've got 2 people in front of you, you've got almost a perfect chance of having at least one of them not get a good night's sleep, right? What happens if your partner snores? Now, I know women don't snore. Men snore. Women purr, men snore. But what happens if your partner is a disruptive sleeper for whatever reason? Maybe they have, hyperactive legs, right? Maybe they toss and turn a lot. Maybe they snore. Maybe they get up several times a night. What does that do to your sleep, right? And when you get a sleep system on a person, who's the best person to tell you whether the sleeping has changed? Their partner, right? And it's usually a man. The man will say, it's not doing anything. Right? And the woman will go, Fred! Because it is helping and it is changing the sleep. And when you get someone to sleep, it changes the life of the whole family, doesn't it? I don't actually ask individuals how they sleep. I say, how does your family sleep? Because even if there's a child in the house that doesn't sleep well, the mom doesn't sleep well, right? Okay, so then I take people out into the kitchen and I show them the water system. And I don't do much in the way of explanation anymore. I don't know whether you guys know about this, but in Calgary, we'll take 2 glasses of water, and the first glass of water will have chlorine in it, and the second glass of water will also have chlorine in it. We'll put them on the table, and then I'll ask the person if they have lotion on their hands, and if they do, I have them wash their hands. Because lotion is a barrier, right? If they don't have it, so they wash their hands. And then I say, be my assistant here, and I give them a little bottle of OTO. That's the stuff we use in pools, the drops we use to check for chlorine levels in pools. And then, so they put 10 drops in the one glass, and it turns yellow, looks like urine, right? And so I go, wow, do you want to drink that? And they go, no. I say, well, here, give me your hand. And I put their hand in the other glass, and I have them stir it around very gently. Because I don't want them to think they've, vaporized the chlorine that's in there. Just to get their hand in contact with the water. And then I give them the dropper, and I say, put the same 10 drops of water, of OTO in that. And of course it stays perfectly clear, because they've removed, in 10 seconds, 98% of the chlorine out of that glass. And they go, wow. And I tell them that when they shower and drink chlorinated water for the first 35 years of their life, there's an increased tendency to cancer of the colon of 44%, and an increased tendency to cancer of the bladder by 66%. And that study's been done all over the world, and it's a really easy study to do. You just take people who are bathing and drinking chlorinated water, and in the cities, and you compare it to country mice, who don't have any chlorine in their well water that they're showering and drinking with. And in every country in the world, it's the same percentages. Okay? And so that's how I introduce the shower system to them. And then I show them 2 pictures of the tomatoes. So I say, the one on the left has been given a bath in our water, and the one on the right has been given a bath in city water. What's the largest organ in your body? Skin. I said, which one do you want to have in your bath water or your shower water? That's pretty easy, right? And then I pull this beautiful thing out. I've not met Chad Nelson. I hope to meet Chad, but that's a beautifully simple experiment. He took 4 yams, organic yams, put them in tap water, reverse osmosis well water, and pine egg water. Which one do you want your brain feasting on? Your brain is 87% water. It's pretty important, isn't it? And that's all I say about water. And then I take them into my family room, and I take a blanket. Most of us have a blanket on a couch or something, and I take it over, and I just shake. The little monitor is on the left side. As you're looking at it, is on the left side of your unit. And so I just shake that by that air monitor, and in about 8 seconds, whoosh, that thing has gone up to red. And while they're looking at that, I then take them over and I show them some of the medical research that's been done on negative ions and how helpful it is. And they go, wow. And then I hand them bottles of our nutritionals. And we don't talk much about it, a little bit. Then here's something that you guys might not be aware of. There's a book out there called Medicinal Mushrooms. Have you ever heard of that book? Yeah, have you all heard of it? It's called Medicinal Mushrooms, Ancient Remedies for Modern Ailments. And I found it in chapters. One day I was browsing through the books that I thought, people would be reading. And I went, boy, a book on mushrooms. Boy, I hope we're in there. And I had to read to page 135 before I found what I was delighted to find. And I'm going to read it to you. The most sophisticated and advanced multi-mushroom formula of which the authors are aware is called Nikken Bio-Directed Immunity. The formula combines 14 different medicinal mushrooms, including the 8 described in this book, because Nikken has 6 mushrooms that no one else in the world has access to. Right? The product is sold and distributed by Nikken, a worldwide distributor of health-related products. Isn't that great? Then I go to the back, and it gets even better. They list a producer's list of all the large companies that produce mushroom products. And here's what it says about Nikken. Nikken, a network marketing company, offers a unique 14 mushroom formula that includes several rare species and exclusive strains grown especially for Nikken. Nikken's formula is the Rolls-Royce of multiple mushroom formulas. The global giant, Nikken, is a leader and innovator in the highest quality wellness technology. And these guys have nothing to do with Nikken. And I tell people that we get that kind of third-party validation all the time. And then I read them the results, and I show them the results of Dr. Naidu's study on our bone health pack. And they just look at those graphs and they go, wow. And with them, I read the conclusion, and then they go, their mouths are like this now. And it doesn't matter whether they're housewives or engineers or university professors or doctors. It doesn't matter who they are. When you've talked about sleep, water, air, and nutrition, I finish up with this question. I say, can I ask you a question? I'm going to ask you a question. Can I? Does it make sense to you that the quality of sleep that your body gets, the quality of water that you bring into your body, the quality of air that you bring into your lungs, and the quality of nutrition that you give to your individual cells has got to have something to do with how healthy your body is?
Yes.
I get yes or absolutely or virtually 99% of the time, right? And the rest of the time I get something else that's positive too. I say, what interests you the most? Where would you like to start? If you can get everything, get everything. But if you can't, start somewhere. My goodness. Our health is our wealth, right? Both my wife and I have had some health challenges over the years, and we're well. We're well. I remember we were walking around in front of our house one day, and my wife said to me, she said, Jim, we're wealthy. We're wealthy in terms of finances. We're wealthy in terms of the family that we have. We're wealthy in terms of the friends that we have. And we're wealthy in terms of the experiences that we can have in the world. And if we don't have our health, we've got nothing. Isn't that the truth? I say to people, that's my presentation. And that presentation, even with all the extra stuff that I don't tell them about, has taken us 51 minutes. Usually we do it in around 40 minutes. And I believe that people don't want to take a long time to do a presentation. I believe that's the first thing. They say they can't do it. When I first started out, I was given a lecture. And I was trying to do it at a medical school level. And they'd be sitting up at the beginning of that, and by the end, they'd be just sliding down like this. And they go, Doc, that was great, really interesting. But I can't do that. right? But everybody can spell swan, right? And you know, there's an even easier presentation coming out. It's called the vital presentation. Have you all heard of that? You know, what's vital in your life? You know, the first thing is air, the second thing's water, next thing's sleep, then nutrition, and then income. And what's poor levels of that look like, and what are good levels of that look like? What would it be like to have the kind of income that you wanted, for example? What would it be like to have the kind of air that you could breathe? Where do you go to breathe good mountain air? Do you live there? No, you don't. Where do you get your water from? Most of us get our water from the city, you know. Where do you get you're sleeping on a sleep system? And here's a question that I love to ask people. I say, when you wake, do you want to know how to ask people about sleep? At least how I do it? It's really simple. Just walk your way through it. You say, what time do you go to bed at night? And they go, whatever time they go to bed. And you say, how long does it take you to fall asleep? Because if it takes longer than 5 to 10 minutes, that's normal. We know that from sleep studies. So if they say, gee, it takes me 40 minutes to go to sleep, they have a problem. What if they say, I'm a great sleeper. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm asleep. We go, you're exhausted. You're not getting a good restorative sleep at all. That's why you fall asleep when you're watching television, right? And they go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, Wendy apparently falls asleep during television. So then I say, do you get up at night? And why do you get up at night? And most of us get up at night as we get older to go to the bathroom. And if your partner gets up, sometimes that disturbs you. And do you think between the time you go to the bathroom and you come back, you've woken up a little bit? It's disrupted your deep level of sleep. And then I say, what time do you get up in the morning? And do you get up with your alarm or before your alarm? And then I ask this question, and I love this question. I got it from my grandchildren. I said, when you wake up in the morning, do you have all the energy you want to do the things you love to do? Isn't that a great question? Do you have all the energy you want to do the things you love to do? And almost everybody says, no, I'd like more energy. Right? I said, well, we have the answer for you. And people say, wow. And because it makes sense, they get started on their own. So I don't have to close anybody. They close themselves. Because when you've seen that and it's so logical, how can you not want to have those products for you and your family? Does that make sense? So, network marketing. Did anybody have a trouble with the fact that this was network marketing? I think I mentioned earlier, I didn't have any experience with network marketing, except when I was first a doctor and came to Calgary, someone invited me out to dinner. And at that time, my wife and I had a practice wife. When my first wife and I were there, we didn't have any friends because we'd come from Ontario. And when we came out, somebody asked us out for dinner. And I thought, great, we're going to have friends. And this guy's not a doctor, and I really like him. And it's important to have friends outside your profession of what you do. And we got there, and there were 19 other couples who'd been asked to that same dinner. And it was an old network marketing company. And I was kind of disappointed in that. But, you know, we went on and we built we didn't join that company, but we went on and built that friendship with that couple at any rate. And we loved them then and we love them now. But apart from that, I didn't have any bad experiences with network marketing. But some people, what is it Marty Jeffrey used to say, network marketing is just one step short of purse snatching, right? Well, Marty would say that in a humorous way, and Marty was one of the funniest speakers ever. And I kept saying, Marty, don't say that. You know, there's a lot of people out here who haven't had any bad experience with network marketing, and you know, you're maybe creating a problem that doesn't exist. So, at any rate, I love network marketing. I love the fact that you don't have any employees, that you don't have any expenses, that you can work with your friends. And who are the people that as I get older, I want playmates. The people that I want to live the longest are the people that I know in my exact environment, right? The people that I love and care about, my children, my family, and my friends, right? Why wouldn't I tell them about this stuff? Especially when it works. Especially when it makes sense to them. So I tell folks that every person who's ever had dinner around our dining room table, and that's a lot of people, have a complete wellness home. Now, some of them do the business with me. Most of them don't, but some of them do the business with me. And some of them are just wholesale buyers, and that's just great because I want them to have the products, whether or not they help me out. Mostly, it's pretty hard to not tell your best friend, isn't it? Yeah, and that's what network marketing is to me. And I love the training that comes from people. I don't have anyone in this room that works with me, and of course everybody works with Dave and Valerie, which is a great thing. But we get people coming into Calgary all the time. This weekend, Dr. Naidu is there, and I couldn't be there. Oh no, it's next weekend. Dr. Naidu is going to be, so I made a little video to be part of that presentation because my wife is taking me away to a destination yet unknown to me on Wednesday to celebrate my birthday, and I'm thrilled with that. So I love the training and support. I love the income. In my 5th month in the business, I made more money from Nikken part-time than I made from my medical practice full-time. Right? Now, I worked hard. I saw that Reed Nelson tape that you should see 30 people. And so, boy, I didn't want to fail. I saw 33 people, and 31 of them signed up with me. Because I have a lot of personal credibility, right? Being a medical doctor. And people say it's an advantage. It is an advantage in some ways, and it's a pain in the neck in other ways. Because I probably get asked more questions than most people work. One of my lead distributors, when people ask her, how does it work? She says, I don't know. It just does. And so in fact, it's probably easier for her. But I do love the training and support. I love the income. I love the freedom. I love the fact that Joy and I are taking a week off to just celebrate my birthday, and I think we're going to make it a birthday month instead of a birthday week. And yet, I'm still going to have income, and I'm still going to be able to do a little bit of work from wherever I am. Not this week, but some weeks I can work from anywhere I am in the world, really. So what's not to like about this? We help a lot of people, we have a lot of fun, and we make a pretty decent income.